friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here today to talk about how I, at least, do it. Clean off a wood stove that I'm cooking on. And this is usually done when the stove is hot, because the wood stove doesn't need cleaning when it's not being used in the warmer months. But through about 9 months of the year, the wood stove is getting used on a pretty regular basis. I do most of my cooking and even some baking on top of the wood stove for that period of time. So as long as there's a fire going, it's getting used in many different ways. And I have a few videos out that related to the wood stove, the pros and cons, how I cook and bake on top of the wood stove. Even one that I did pretty recently on the new wood stove top oven that I got and how I've been using it so far. But as one can expect, the wood stove is going to get dirty. Things get spilled on it, and because it is cast iron, it does need to be seasoned from time to time. And so it may seem like a daunting task, but it's actually pretty simple, even when the stovetop is hot. Like I said, that's when I do it most of the time. And there are some things that I do where I actually cook things directly on the wood stove, such as when I'm making my homemade tortillas, and then I bake them directly on the wood stove without a pan. Obviously, I want that surface to be clean. But really, when it comes to that, the thing you have to be most concerned about is any dust that has settled on there before you need it. Because anything that gets spilled on there is going to get very hot from the wood stove. It's going to burn that. It's going to kill any of the nasty bacteria and things that you don't want to get into the other foods you're going to cook on. Still, I do like to have a nice clean surface before I cook directly on it. Or as in the case when I did grill Patrick a steak on top of the wood stove, it's also good to make sure that surface is well seasoned just before you're going to be cooking something that you know something's going to spill on it, because that's going to make it much easier to clean off. In the case of the steak, I did make sure the top of the wood stove was seasoned, well oiled, as well as the chunk of grill that I was using for that steak. And so then when it was all done, everything cleaned up pretty simply. Now there's a couple ways that you can go about that, and in every case it's going to involve using some kind of fat to clean the wood stove. Now you can use just regular cheap salt mixed with the fat or oil, and do something like using a stainless steel scrubber like this. This one doesn't look very pretty because I've been using this one for a very long time. I love stainless steel scrubbers like this because not steel wool. Just regular steel wool is not stainless and it will rust, but this does not. So just getting yourself some good quality stainless steel scrubbers. They're not very expensive. Like I got a dozen of these. I think these ones I got on Amazon, or you can usually find them in the cleaning section of your hardware store. Ours has that. Typically those ones you find in the kitchen section are not actually stainless steel, and even those copper coated ones they don't last. Get yourself some stainless steel ones. This is what I use most frequently on my cast iron pans. So in a lot of ways there's very little difference between cleaning off the top of a wood stove than there is cleaning a cast iron skillet. And I do have a video on that I'll also link to down below. But anyway, you can use some kind of oil, the salt, and a scrubber like this to just clean it. Just got to move quickly if the top of the wood stove is hot. You know, and that's one way that you can do that. I very rarely have used the salt on top of the wood stove. I've used the scrubber from time to time, but that's not my most common way to do it. Normally what I do is I keep a paint scraper next to the wood stove, just like I keep this one in here in the kitchen for its many uses in here. So what I do is if I've got, you know, bigger chunks, things that are burned on there, I take that paint scraper and just scrape that off first, and then I'll take a t-shirt rag and just quickly wipe it off. You can do that without burning yourself. It's pretty simple to do. In any of these video clips I'm showing you, the wood stove is very hot. And then after I wipe all that loose stuff off, I then take some, we get a lot of these store flyers because our son works at the store, and so he's always bringing us the excess store flyers because we use them for packaging, but many other things for cleaning. I also use these to clean the glass on the wood stove as well. I use homemade vinegar and I use these. But anyway, I'll take this, and then the fat that I prefer to use is the organic palm shortening that I have here. Yes, you can get it where it's more sustainably harvested. And Tropical Traditions, which I think is also now known as Healthier Traditions, is where I've got mine. Mine's actually quite a few years old. I bought it in bulk, a 33-pound bag, and I did get a couple of the buckets, and I just keep refilling the buckets. But it's taken me a long time to work through it because I don't use it a ton, just for pie crust, biscuits, and for seasoning pans and the wood stove. And the reason I like this better is not only does it just do a better job of seasoning than coconut oil or any other type of oil, it doesn't smoke the way coconut oil does. When I do the top of the wood stove in coconut oil, my whole house ends up smoky for the rest of the day. But I find that when I use the palm shortening, it does not do that, and it works very well. So I just will drop a dab on there. You can do that again with the salt and the scrubber, or mostly what I do is put that dab on there, and then I take the newspaper and wad it up so my hands aren't touching the heat at all, and then quickly rub that around in there. And then I'll notice if I need to do any more scraping, I'll go ahead and go across that again. So not only are you cleaning that surface, you're also seasoning it to give it better protection, which when you've got a wood stove running all the time, you'll always notice that right where the hottest part of the wood stove is where it's lightest. That's where it usually needs it the most, because that's getting used and burned off quicker. And it's a pretty simple process. And just remember, that wood stove gets pretty hot, so it's going to be sterile when you go to use it. Once you have that cleaned off and it's all heated through, anything that's on there is sterile. So don't worry about cooking directly on that. Even if you still see some spots, they're not going to hurt you, trust me. So if you have a wood stove, whether it be a cook stove, anything that you're cooking on, how do you clean your wood stove and then season it well? Do you usually do it when it's cold, or like me, do you do it while it's hot? And share with us your tips and your favorite things to use on it, favorite ways to clean it, so everybody can learn from you, because this is just how I do it. Everybody's going to have their own method, just like cleaning out a cast iron pan. Everyone's going to have their own method for that as well. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.